For 700 years, Earth has been silent, forgotten, lost in the void. But across the vastness of space, one last signal survived. And when an alien civilization decoded it, they brought back a human, not a soldier, not a leader, just a voice. And that voice might decide the fate of an entire galaxy. In the year 2987, the Earth was a memory, a ghost planet drifting in silence. Its skies once thundered with rockets and satellites. Its oceans had once carried whispers of civilization. But all of that was gone now. War, climate collapse, famine. The world fell not with a bang, but with static. But space remembers. 7 centuries later, on the edge of the Andromeda Rift, the Telluri, an advanced, peaceful alien species, detected a strange, repeating signal. It wasn't a language they knew. It wasn't coordinates. It was music, a human voice, an old radio transmission encoded in binary, a desperate message from the final days of Earth. The Telluri listened, and they were moved. Within that broken signal, they found something no AI or archive ever truly captured: emotion, loss, hope, and encoded deep within the signal's data stream, human DNA, reconstructible, rewritable, recoverable. So they did what no other species had ever done. They resurrected a being from a long-dead world. They called him Adam. When Adam opened his eyes, he wasn't on Earth. He wasn't even in his solar system. He was aboard the Elythra, a living bioship orbiting a crystalline city in space. Everything around him was made of flowing, glowing stone and symbiotic vines. The air hummed softly. The stars pulsed with unfamiliar constellations. And he was alone. Except he wasn't. Telluri watched from behind ethereal walls, studying him like a museum artifact. They didn't speak, not with mouths. They communicated through pulses of light, waves of empathy, and vibrations in the walls. And slowly, they began to understand each other. Adam, confused, scared, grieving a world long gone, became their ambassador to the extinct. He told them stories of rivers, of snow, of laughter, of fear, of love. He sang them lullaby from a planet they never saw. He drew pictures of forests they would never touch. And they listened, truly listened. But not all species in the galaxy were as kind as the Telluri. Soon, word spread, a human lives again. To some, it was a miracle. To others, a threat. A distant empire, the Varnok Dominion, feared the rise of humanity once more. The last time they encountered humans, millennia ago in scattered skirmishes, they saw creatures who would rather burn than bow. Creatures who created weapons of stars. The Varnok didn't want that kind of flame to ever rise again. And so, they came. Giant warships. Black as void. Silent. Without negotiation. They demanded the human be turned over. Erased. Forgotten. The Telluri refused. They had resurrected Adam, not as a weapon, but as a message, proof that even extinction couldn't silence a soul. And that's when everything changed. The Varnok fleet darkened stars. Their ships were not built. They were bred, biomechanical leviathans designed for one thing: domination. From the Elythra's observation dome, Adam could see them blotting out the nebulae like a plague spreading across a painting. The Telluri, wise and peaceful, had never fought a war in over 1,000 years. They had no army, no weapons, but they had something far more dangerous: conviction. Adam stepped forward before the Telluri high circle. Despite his fear, his knees shaking, he looked them in their radiant, translucent eyes and said just one word: "Let me speak." The Telluri debated through a wave of shared empathy, their bodies shimmering like glass in starlight. Finally, the high luminary stepped aside. A chamber was prepared. A galactic broadcast system, older than most stars, was activated. And across the galaxy, from empire to outpost, his voice echoed. He spoke not as a soldier, not as a president, not as a general, but as a human. My name is Adam. I am the last breath of Earth. I am the echo of 8 billion dreams. And though I was born centuries after the world died, I remember everything because you remembered us. He paused, not because he forgot the words, but because the memory of humanity rose in his throat like fire. We were broken. Yes, we fell to our own hands. But we also built cathedrals of light. We cured plagues. We danced under burning skies. We created art from suffering and symphonies from silence. You fear me because you remember our rage. But I ask you to remember our wonder. I am not your threat. I am your mirror. And if you silence me, you silence every species that ever dreamed of stars. The Varnock hesitated. Their logic-driven minds faltered, not because of tactics, but because of something they couldn't quantify: truth. They saw in Adam not a weapon, but a living monument to everything they had forgotten: passion, chaos, love, and loss. And across thousands of systems, species who had never heard Earth's name before wept. For a moment, Adam became more than human. He became a myth, a symbol, a flame in the dark. The Varnock left, not in fear, but in reverence. And Adam remained, but he was no longer alone. In the years that followed, humans were not recreated as soldiers or colonists, but as storytellers. The Tal'Uri built a great archive, a cathedral of memory where Adam spoke, day and night, of oceans and cities, of mothers and storms, of sunsets over deserts, of poems scratched on prison walls. And new species came to listen. Each one left carrying a spark of earth in their hearts. Not because we were perfect, but because we were real. Years passed. Adam grew older, not just in body, but in spirit. Every day, he stood in the grand archive of light, where beings from every corner of the galaxy gathered in silence. Some had wings of plasma. Others shimmered like oil. A few floated as clouds of sentient dust. But when Adam spoke, they all listened like children around a fire. He didn't tell them of glory or conquest. He told them of small things, of a grandmother's hands brushing flour off her apron, of the taste of rainwater on cracked lips, of the first time someone said, "I love you," and meant it. In his stories, they saw themselves. In his grief, they felt their own. And through that, they connected. Soon, other species began to record their own tales, stories of survival, of love, of sacrifice. The archive expanded into a living, breathing library of galactic emotion, and at its heart was a human voice. But even legends are bound by time. One day, Adam did not rise from his sleep pod. The Elythra dimmed its lights in mourning. Across the Tal'Uri nebula gardens, bioluminescent vines curled into spirals of silence. Word spread, and from systems light years away, ships arrived not with weapons, but with flowers. A funeral unlike any other was held in orbit around a dying blue star. There was no coffin, no tomb. Adam's essence was returned to the cosmos, his DNA woven into glowing crystals scattered through solar winds, seeded into planets, orbiting moons and gas giants. In time, the Tal'Uri would call these places echo gardens, worlds where Adam's memory would guide dreamers, poets, and seekers. And then it happened. On a small, icy moon in Sector 93, a young alien girl with skin like molten glass touched one of the crystals and saw something. A city skyline, laughter, blue sky. Her people had no words for these things, but now they had visions. And visions spark creation. Within a century, Project Regenesis was born. It wasn't about cloning humanity, but inviting it back in pieces, through stories, through shared memory. One alien sculpted a mountain in the shape of Earth's continents. Another composed a symphony inspired by birdsong. Entire civilizations began blending Adam's stories with their own cultures, creating a new galactic mythology. Humanity hadn't returned in flesh, but in spirit. In every school where children painted Earth with colors they had never seen. In every temple where a whisper of "we were here" echoed in a language never spoken on Earth. In every explorer who gazed at the stars and said, "I wonder what it felt like to be human." And far beyond it all, drifting past galaxies yet unborn, Adam's final message pulsed through deep space. A single repeating phrase, carried on golden light. We were small, but we dreamed big, and in that dream, we became infinite. Centuries passed. Adam's name became a whisper across spacefaring civilizations. He was remembered not as a hero, but as a storyteller, the way old Earth once remembered Homer or Tagore. His words had become sacred. His emotions had become culture. His legacy was not carved in monuments, but in hearts. But far, far beyond the known systems, in the void sector where no stars burned, a signal blinked. It was faint, broken, fragmented by radiation and time. Telluri scouts picked it up purely by accident, buried in the cosmic noise of dying quasars. At first, it was dismissed. Another echo, another artifact. But then, a young scientist named Virel decoded the pulse. It wasn't Adam's voice. It was another human. A woman's voice, tired but determined, repeating on loop, "This is Dr. Lena Farrow. If anyone can hear this, the Earth isn't dead. We're still here. We're trying to find our way home." Shockwaves pulsed through the Telluri Empire. Could it be? Was Adam not the last? Deep archives were unlocked. Coordinates were calculated. A forgotten, sealed-off wormhole near Black Dwarf, long labeled unstable, was re-examined. And buried in gravitational static was a second signal, dozens of them. Voices. Human. Faint. Survivors. Across the galaxy, a realization spread like wildfire. Earth hadn't vanished. It had gone dark, buried, sleeping beneath its own scars. But somewhere, somehow, humanity had endured. The Council reconvened. Exploration ships were prepared. The Archive of Light now had a new mission, not just to remember, but to reconnect. And so, long after Adam's death, because of the stories he told, the galaxy reached back toward the forgotten cradle of mankind. The stars, once silent, now whispered a new promise. A home, still waiting. A people, still fighting. And a dream, still alive. Somewhere on the edges of time, where even light struggles to exist, an anomaly formed. It wasn't a black hole. It wasn't a planet. It was a memory, encoded not in atoms or signals, but in space itself. The Telluri called it the fold, a ripple in reality that hummed with human emotion. Some believed it was a side effect of Adam's resurrection. Others whispered that when a story is powerful enough, it leaves a scar on the universe. Pilgrims came from every star system to witness the fold. No instruments could measure it. No eyes could see it clearly, but everyone who stepped close felt something. A smell they couldn't name. A sound they remembered from dreams. A word that was on the tip of their tongue. They described it differently, but always it felt human. Then one day, a child stepped into it. A half-human, half-Telluri girl born on the Archive moon. Her name was Kayla. Curious, brave, and filled with stories passed down from Adam's recordings. She touched the edge of the fold and vanished. No alarm triggered. No energy spike. Just a soft whisper in the wind. I remember. Days later, a message appeared in the archive's main chamber. It wasn't sent. It wasn't carved. It simply existed, written in both ancient Earth English and Telluri light spirals. The stars don't forget. They remember every dream, every scream, every story. Adam opened the door. Kayla walked through it. Now, we are not human. We are what comes after. Galactic scholars debated it for years. Was it a metaphor, a glitch in reality? Or had Kayla truly become something new, a being born not of biology, but of memory and myth? It didn't matter. What mattered was this. In the cold vacuum of the cosmos, where civilizations rise and fall like tides, humanity had carved a place not through power, but through story. Not by conquering, but by being remembered. Centuries turned to millennia. The galaxy itself changed. Old empires faded into stardust. Languages died. New ones bloomed like fireflies in the dark. Planets shifted. Suns were born and died. But the archive remained, quiet, pulsing, eternal. And one day, it spoke again. Not through voice, but through dreams. Across multiple species and worlds, people, random, unconnected, began to dream the same dream. A forest of blue leaves, a sky filled with birds they couldn't name, and in the distance, a single figure standing beneath a tree, smiling. Always the same figure, always the same smile. When these dreamers awoke, they didn't know his name, but when shown the image of a human, of Adam, they whispered, "Yes, that's him." The Telluri philosophers declared it the birth of the dream net, a psychic resonance seeded across the cosmos, not engineered, not coded, but felt. a kind of universal consciousness where the memory of one species, humanity, had embedded itself into the mind space of all sentient life. Adam had not just lived. He had become the myth at the root of civilization. The DreamNet began to change people. Artists who had never seen water began painting oceans. Engineers who had never known Earth designed bridges shaped like DNA helices. Children born on asteroid colonies began drawing blue planets in the sky without ever being taught. And somewhere in a reality beyond dimensions, Kayla watched, not as a being of skin and bone, but as light, song, and thought. She drifted through timelines, across layers of memory, sowing new seeds, touching one mind here, whispering a story there. She wasn't alone. Adam was there too, not as a ghost, but as a presence, as old as time, as warm as home. Together, they had become something no species had ever achieved, echoes that evolved into gods not of power, but of meaning. They didn't rule. They didn't command. They simply reminded. The child looks up at the stars and asks, were the humans real? The parent smiles, gazes upward, and replies, they still are. Every time you tell a story, every time you dream, you bring them back. The fire crackles, the stars shimmer, and a distant whisper rides the solar wind once more. We were human, and we remembered how to be infinite.